Welcome to HalloweenWitches.com, where we're going to share one of our many spooky stories with you today. This one comes from the mortal Marge T., who lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Let's begin. When me and my sister Deb were young, our parents used to rent a cottage in Maine for a few weeks every summer. It was a nice place near the water, but really boring for us kids, with nothing to do for weeks at a time. That's okay, we found plenty of trouble to get into. Down the road from our cottage, there lived a family, full-time, that had 2 boys, Ron and Phil. The 4 of us would go down to the beach and throw rocks in the water or search for cool stuff that washed up on the beach. One day, we were out late and the sun was going down, and the tide was starting to come in, so we left the beach and walked down the road to go to the woods. The trails through the woods were kind of overgrown, so I don't think many people used them. It was creepy in the woods because it was starting to get dark, and the little bit of daylight left couldn't really get through all those tree branches. I could tell Deb was nervous because she kept turning around as we were walking. I asked her what was wrong, but she just shook her head and kept walking. Ron spoke up and said, "I bet she can feel the evil spirits here. I've seen them. They're real." We laughed and said, "Yeah, right." But Ron acted all serious about it, and even Phil was nodding yes, like he believed it too. Ron motioned for us to come closer, and he would tell us about it. We all sat down on some dead logs by the side of the path, and he said that one night, a few nights before Halloween last year, he had been out walking in the woods later than he meant to, and it was almost full dark. And he thought he'd better make his way home. He said he wasn't really worried because he had a little flashlight with him, so he turned it on and followed the trail. He was almost out of the woods when he heard a loud shriek and a crash, like something big was coming through the woods right behind him. He didn't stop to see what it was. He just ran for his life. When he got out to the main road, the one that our cottage is on, he turned to look back, and he saw faint, white shapes floating between the trees, and he could hear voices murmuring, like chanting or something. He turned around and ran as fast as he could back to his house. When he got home, he told his father what he had seen. And his father told him that many years ago, that road used to be a stagecoach route, before any of the houses or cottages were built on it. One night, some local kids dressed all in white clothes and hid in the woods and waited for the stagecoach to come through. The stagecoach driver was a mean old guy, and they wanted to scare him. When the stagecoach got close to them, they jumped out of the woods, yelling and waving their arms. And the horses got spooked and took off down the road with the stagecoach flying behind. And they didn't stop. They ran right off the cliff where the road curves to go into the main part of the road. The cliffs aren't really that high, maybe just 100-foot drop, but the horses, driver, passengers hit the jagged rocks below, and all of them died. Ron's dad said that ever since then, you can see ghostly white travelers walking that road at night and moving through the woods, searching for the kids that killed them, especially around Halloween. I don't know if that's a true story or not, but I can tell you one thing, it scared the heck out of me. Even though it was still summertime, I didn't want it to be in those woods for another second longer. The others agreed, and we all hurried out to the road. Nothing weird happened on the way, but that night I couldn't stop thinking about that story and wonder if there was anything to those ghostly travelers, and had Ron really seen them? I kept trying to forget about it and go to sleep, but I was awake long after midnight. Everyone else was asleep, but I could swear I heard some murmuring outside. At first, I got scared, But then I figured it must be Ron and Phil trying to scare me. I got out of bed and went to the window and looked down onto the road in front of our cottage. There was no street lights, but the moon was bright enough so I could see, and sure enough, there they were. They were walking down the road towards the woods, talking quietly to each other and not looking up at me at all. I leaned out the window and whispered loudly, "Hey!" They stopped walking and turned to look up at me. And when they did, I was suddenly covered in goosebumps from head to toe. I don't know who they were, but they weren't Ron and Phil. These looked to be young guys, maybe a few years older than Ron and Phil, but I realized that they weren't real people because they were giving off a kind of glow. Not real bright, but it was definitely there. They looked at each other and said something, then turned and started walking down the road again. And the weirdest thing was that I couldn't hear their footsteps. It's a gravel drive, and usually you hear crunch, crunch, crunch. But I couldn't hear anything. These guys were 100% silent. I got so scared by that I slammed the window closed, even though it was hot out that night, and I jumped into my sister's bed and stayed there until morning. I don't think I slept at all, and not again for the next few nights either. I don't know if those were some of the ghostly travelers I saw, and I never did see them again, but I was sure glad when my parents started renting a different cottage further up the coast next year. Well, I don't know. It appears it could be possible. We're not really sure. For more spooky stories, scary recipes, howling good party ideas, costumes, makeup, wigs, or candy for Halloween, visit www.halloween-witches.com or follow the link below the video. Whoa, goodbye.